believe this. Having power over other people is not in your self-interest. It destroys self-esteem. It destroys your capacity to appreciate your own life. Because how do we get happy? Where does happiness come from? Happiness is not some subjective thing that anybody can be happy in any given moment. That is not what happiness is about. Happiness requires certain objective actions in reality. It requires, for example, that you have self-esteem. And self-esteem comes from achieving real goals. Self-esteem comes from knowing you can take care of yourself and take care of your family by producing something in the real world. It doesn't come from manipulating other people. It doesn't come from lying, cheating, and stealing. And we just said that all politicians lie, cheat, and steal, so they don't get self-esteem. So I don't believe they're self-interested. And I know there's a whole economic theory about how politicians are self-interested. Public choice, it's called. Some of them believe what they're doing is good, but it's not good, and therefore they can be happy. Just believing something. You try it. I don't believe in this positive thinking. All you have to do is think positive and everything's wonderful. It's bullshit. It's reality that matters. What actually happens in the world out there that matters to whether you're successful as a human being or not. Some of them believe that what they're doing is good, and we have to change their ideas. Some of them are power lusters. They want power, not because it makes them happy, because they're corrupt individuals. Just for the same reason as some people lie, steal, and cheat, even though it's self-destructive, they still do it. They can't control themselves. They're emotionalists. They've abandoned reason. How many politicians do you know who use reason? Very few. So, we have to be very careful about what we define as self-interest. In my view, self-interest is something very specific from a moral point of view. From a moral point of view, it means behaving in a particular kind of way. And I encourage you all to read Ayn Rand, The Virtue of Selfishness. And I know it's very hard to get in Polish, so try to get it in English. In English, it's easy to get. The Virtue of Selfishness, where she articulates the morality of self-interest and the morality that leads to human happiness and human flourishing. Now, the second part of your question is about how do you establish a government that is limited?
And that will sustain.
Well, look, nothing is sustainable. Nothing is sustainable unless people believe in it. I don't care what structure, I don't care. I know there are probably a bunch of anarcho-capitalists here. That's not sustainable under any circumstances, in my view. But never mind if people don't believe in it. You might believe in, I've heard some people believe in a monarchy. There'll be a revolution if people don't agree with the monarch, right? I mean, nothing's sustainable unless the people buy into it. And this is why what I'm asking for is not a political revolution where we change the Constitution and we change this and that. I'm asking for a moral revolution where we change the moral code that the people are going by. And if we change that, then the political revolution is relatively easy. I think the founding fathers of America got it pretty close. Not perfect, but close. You could rewrite the Constitution to make it clearer, more assertive, more clear about the role of government as only protecting individual rights, never initiating force, separation of state from economics, from state from education, state from science, state from religion, and ideas generally. And you would have a really much, much better Constitution than they have in the United States. But even that would fail unless the people, at least the intellectuals within the people who teach at these universities, who are today almost all lefties, right? 80% of all professors in the world are lefties. But imagine if 80% of all the professors in the world were capitalists, were self-interested, right? Believed in the morality of self-interest in capitalism. Then it almost doesn't matter what the Constitution says, you'd have capitalism. You'd have a limited government. So to me, what's important is what the intellectuals believe, because they rule the culture. They dictate what the culture is. When the intellectuals are leftist, we will have leftism. When the intellectuals are capitalist, but with a proper philosophy, we will have capitalism. So I would change the Constitution. I would have separation of powers like in the original American Constitution. I would have very limited democracy. You could vote on very few things. And then I would leave it alone. And I think it's sustainable, as long as we perpetuate the ideas on which is founded. The reason the American Revolution failed 200 years later, it took it a while, but it failed, is because they never had a philosophical foundation. All they had was Locke, who was a great political philosopher, but had nothing new to say about morality or epistemology or metaphysics. We need a new foundation for the principles of political freedom. And again, this is Ayn Rand's contribution. Ayn Rand's contribution is providing that philosophy on which we can ground real political liberty, and this time it'll be sustainable. Yeah.
Hello. All right, it works. Well, first of all, I want to ask, because you said that self-interest is good and selflessness is well, and I agree with it, but what about private charities? Are they useless or outright wrong? I mean, because in my opinion, it's like on other business. I give away money and I feel better in exchange. And second,
well, let me answer that first. It depends why you feel better, right? If you feel better because you've appeased some unearned guilt, then it's not good. Get rid of the guilt. It's cheaper than giving money away. If you feel better because you're helping a cause you really believe in, you're helping something to really promote your values and therefore promote your life, then charity's fine. It's just not that important. As I said, Bill Gates did more for the world building Microsoft than he ever did in charity. But take other examples. In 1776, the United States of America was a third-rate colony. I mean, the British barely even fought the war. That's why America won, right? By 1914, America was the strongest, most powerful, richest economic power in the world. That did not happen because of charity. It didn't happen because of charity. Now, charity existed, charity's nice, but what did that happen? What changes the world? What creates wealth? What helps the poor rise from poverty? What annihilated slavery and annihilated child labor? Business. Business changes the world. Charity smooths out the edges a little bit. And that's good. I'm all for charity. If it's done right, if it's motivated by self-interest, then I'm all for charity. But I'm not for just arbitrary charity, and I'm not for guilt. Because you've made money, now you have to give it away. Which is what motivates a lot of charity in America today. It's the guilt of the businessman. Just ask the question, I'll repeat it.
Okay, so I think most of us here are somehow connected to the liberty and freedom movement in Poland. And I would like to ask, what do you think we should do to win the war for capitalism as quickly as it is possible?
Well, first, so the question is, those of you connected to the liberty movement in Poland, what should you do to win the war as quickly as possible? I think first, forget about winning the war quickly. This is not something that's going to be won quickly. This is it's going to require a long, sustained effort. Because if you think it's going to be quick, then you'll have a lot of energy in the beginning, and then it won't happen quickly, and everything will die. So the movement has to be built for the long run. So that's one. Second, I'm from the Ayn Rand Institute, right? I strongly believe that without Ayn Rand, the liberty movement will lose. Because Ayn Rand, whether you guys want it or not, lays the philosophical foundation for liberty. And nobody else does. Nobody else comes close. Hayek doesn't. And indeed, that's why Hayek believes in a mixed economy at the end of the day. Read Road to Serfdom and many of his other works. He believes in a central bank. He changes his mind later. But yeah, there are no absolutes for Hayek. He changes his mind all over the place. Because he has no clear philosophy. So Hayek cannot be and will never be a foundation for liberty. Sorry, I know Hayek is the most popular libertarian thinker out there, but he's not that good of a philosopher. He's a great economist, genius economist, mediocre social thinker, unoriginal for the most part, very conventional. You need Ayn Rand, you need a revolution, an epistemological revolution, a moral revolution. You need new ideas. The old ideas are dead. They're destroying us. They're on the status side. Be real radicals. You want to be radicals only in politics and economics? That's boring. Right? The real fun is to be radical in ethics, to be radical in philosophy. That's where the real war is going to be fought. So to win, you have to promote this new philosophy. You have to promote Ayn Rand's philosophy, not just economics. And you have to bring to the whole thing a real passion, a real love for it, a real love of freedom. But not just a love of freedom because you want to take drugs. It's not a good reason. It's because you want to prosper. Not just prosper materially, but prosper as a human being. The connection between reason and prosperity, in my view, is the most important philosophical connection that Hayek never got, couldn't even conceive of, because he undercuts reason when he can. It's the real connection that is philosophically necessary to win this battle. Reason, self-interest, capitalism. That's the connection. I don't know where the microphone is. Yeah.
Okay. The aim of Christianity is personal salvation. And its self-interest is personal profit. And the sacrifice is only way to gain this profit. Christianity says that salvation is the largest profit that a person can earn. So it's the sacrifice is like when you run a company and you sacrifice, you work hard, you serve the customers because you want to earn millions of money in the future. The same is in the Christianity. You sacrifice because you want to gain salvation in the future. So why the Christianity is against the philosophy of objectivism? For me, it's compatible.
I'm assuming you mean salvation in the next world. I'm assuming what you mean, the payoff is to go to heaven. That's the payoff of sacrifice? Is to go to heaven? He doesn't look like he understands me.
You must speak louder.
What's that?
You must speak louder.
I must speak louder? Oh, I feel like I'm yelling. Do you mean that you sacrifice now so you can go to heaven? Is that the salvation? Yes. So you need some mystical reality that's not real. That's a fantasy that you don't know is actually going to happen. I have news for you, it's not. In order to justify your sacrifice. I live in this world, the reality that is right here and now. I want salvation right here and now. I want happiness and prosperity and flourishing right here, right now. I mean, not right now, but here, right? In this world, I'm willing to invest in long term. To motivate people by a promise of some afterlife, by a promise of some fantasy life. I mean, that's ridiculous. And what if I tell you that statism is good in this life, and you'll be free in the afterlife, so don't worry about freedom here, which is what the Catholic Church has been telling us for hundreds of years. No? What was the Dark Ages? What were the Middle Ages? It was the Catholic Church imposing its will. It was burning people at the stake. It was putting Galileo into house arrest. All in the name of, it's going to be okay in the next life. Don't worry about it. Are we going to argue about religion all evening? So, objectivism is about this world. It's about your life, not what happens after you're dead. It's about living the most flourishing, the most successful life on this earth. And the only way to do that is by use of your reason. We talked about reason is the way in which as human beings we survive and we flourish. But faith is the opposite of reason. Faith is the negation of reason. Faith tells you, believe whether there's evidence or not. That's the essential characteristic of faith. Otherwise we wouldn't use the word faith to describe it. So we're negating reason in the name of freedom? In the name of what? So, I know you want to be Christian and objectivist. Sorry. I mean, I'd rather you be a little bit objectivist and Christian than not objectivist at all. But to be consistently objectivist, uphold reason consistently, with no compromise and no giving up, which is what I think is required to live the good life, you cannot have faith. Faith and reason are opposites.
I have a question.
I don't know where the mic is. She has the mic. Yes.
Okay, I have two questions concerning 2 points that you've raised. The first one, since I'm guessing most of the people here are capitalists or libertarians, and I know that you guys like numbers, so I'd like to refer to this one number that I read in the Washington Post. 85 people uphold more wealth than 3.5 billion people in the world together. So yeah, that brings me to the inequalities part. How can we be flourishing and call ourselves a flourishing percent of people in a world with such radical inequalities, where 3.5 billion people live in radical poverty? And also,
So let me answer that before we go on to the next question, because otherwise I'll be swamped. So I'll throw back a few numbers. One is that since Asia has adopted elements of capitalism, 800 million people have risen out of poverty. From a state in which everybody was poor, now 800 million people are not poor anymore because of freedom. Second, 85 people have created more wealth than 3.5 billion. That's the reality. Bill Gates has created more wealth than, I don't know, I'm trying to multiply how much richer he is than I am, but more wealth, in terms of actual wealth, than thousands of me, or maybe millions of me. That's the reality. He has improved the world in a material sense, thousands or maybe million times more than I have. He deserves every last penny that he has. Now, if you take a farmer in Africa who's subsistence farming, how much wealth is he producing? Zero. Bill Gates, when he creates Microsoft, how much wealth is he producing? Billions, if not trillions of dollars. So yes, Bill Gates is an infinitely number richer because he's infinitely more productive than the poor guy in Africa. Now, why are there 3.5 billion poor people in the world? That's an important question. I care about poor people.